So we're going to go over the cross product of two vectors. And the cross product of two vectors gives us another vector. And this vector itself is perpendicular to the plane that the other two vectors are on. Okay? So I want you to think of it kind of like this. Yeah, it looks like a right angle. Okay. That the new vector we get will be perpendicular to the plane. So essentially, these two vectors create a plane, and I guess the best way to look is make it look like a resultant vector here. The idea that these two are on some type of plane. We'll color it in. So when we find the cross product of those two vectors, we get this vector here, which is perpendicular or at a right angle to the plane that the other two vectors are on. So the formula, and here's some of the information. Essentially, if we're talking about vector A, our x value is known as A1 in this formula. Our y value is A2, and our z value is A3. And same with vector B. 1 is x, 2 is y, 3 is our z or z. Okay. So they've given us two ways to go about it. This is like a column row style, where we set up A2, A3, A1, A2, and then the same things with the B's, and we just use arrows to remember how to do it. Or you can memorize the formula down here. And this formula states that the y value of the first vector times the z value of the second, subtract the z value of the first vector times the y value of the second, gives us our x value of our new vector. So it can be quite complex. So make sure you get this formula down, and we'll go through it in both ways to make sense of it. Okay? So we'll make up two vectors here. Let's say we have, and actually I think no, I won't steal them from the book. We'll make two up. Let's say we have 3, 8, -2 as our vector A, and vector B being -1, -3, -6. Okay. So there's vector A and vector B. We're going to first work on denoting them, so figure out which is which. So if this is our A, we'll call this A1, A2, A3. And this being B will be B1, B2, and B3. Now if we were to set it up as a column and row style, we do 2, 3, 1, 2. Okay? And that'll help us find our x, our y, and our z. So I'm going to write that down right here. We have A2, A3, A1, and A2. Okay. And the same way, so that's one of our columns. We have B2, B3, B1, and B2. And all we do to figure out these values is we multiply across and then subtract. Okay? So we do A2 times B3 first, then A3 times B2. And this will give us our x value. Okay? So we get this value here, and we subtract from the other to find our x value. For our y value, we'll do different colors. We take B3 times B1, or sorry, A3 times B1, A1 times B3. That will give us our y value. We take the first product and subtract by the second product. And finally for z, do it in blue here. Okay, we do A1 by B2, A2 by B1. That will give us our z value. Z, the product of the first, subtract the product of the second. Okay? So, in order to figure this out as a column, we're going to put our A2 in. Our A2 to start is we have 8. That's our A2. A3 is -2. A1 is 3. And A2 is -2 again. And the same with our B's. We have B2 to be -3. B3 is -6. B1 is -1. And -6 again. We're going to multiply across and subtract that value by the next value we multiply across. So our x in this case becomes negative 48, subtract 6. There's our x value. For our y, we take negative 2 times negative 1, which is 2. And we're going to subtract 3 times negative 6, which is negative 18. Okay? And finally, our z, we go 3 times negative 6, which is negative 18. Subtract negative 2 times 1, which is just positive 2. Okay? So our cross product, according to this, ends up as a vector that is negative 54, 20, and negative 20. Okay? This should be our cross product. So one way we can check this is we can put this into dot product to see that if it's perpendicular or not. Okay, we can find the magnitude of both, so we can use our dot product, right? So we'll call this vector C in this case. Okay, so if we find the dot product of vector A dot vector C, if they're perpendicular, what should the dot product be equal to? Remember? 0. It should be equal to 0 in this case. Okay, so I'm going to take our A vector, take those values again, which were 3, 8, negative 2. Yeah. B2 is negative 3. Let me see if I made a mistake here. We jump backwards here just to correct something. We had originally written this up as a 6, but it should have been a 3 for B2, which means this value should be negative 9. So this should be negative 9 here, which is good. Our cross product wouldn't have worked. So in a sense, if we did cross product and it didn't work, we would have noticed we had made an error. So this is a good way to check. This should be negative 9, which means our answer here should be negative 11. Does that seem right? Our A2, we made 2 errors. This should be the value of 8, which means this number here should be negative 8, right? Which is no longer negative 11. Got negative 17. Okay. Are we okay with that? Hopefully we didn't make any other errors along the way. Let's find out. So our A value, like we were talking about before, it's a good thing we went back and checked. 3, 8, negative 2. So our vector A is 3, 8, and negative 2. Okay. So if we find the dot product of both, our new vector C, we'll write it in black underneath here, is negative 54, 20, and negative 17. If we find the dot product between the two, it should equal 0. So this is a great way to check to see if we did make an error. We would have made an error for sure. We'll check again. There might be another along here. So we take our two values and multiply them, which is going to give us, we'll use a quick calculator here, 12, is it 172? Let's try 3 times 54, 162. Negative 162, 20 by 8, so plus 160. Is that right? Yeah, this doesn't look right. Plus 34. So this is not equal 0, our cross product, which means there is some other error in here.
Negative. Isn't it plus 90? 48? Here.
Let's go through it. Well, we took an overview here and we noticed I made another error. I'm very mistaken too. Right here. This should be plus 8, so we'll zoom in and take a look. And obviously, practice makes perfect, and I haven't done this in a while. But this should be, because it's subtracting negative 8, this should become plus 8, which would have made this value negative 1, which would have made this, in the end, plus 2, which would have made our final dot product 0. So I guess in a sense, it's good we went through the dot product. You guys picked up 3 of my wonderful errors. So that's the idea, and pretty much that's all there is for cross product. It's just going through this process so that we have it memorized.